There was a house on Bracken Hollow Road that no one claimed, though it had stood there for nearly a century. From the roadside it looked almost dignified, a tall, narrow Victorian, with ivy curling up its face like green veins, its shutters sagging like tired eyelids. It was the kind of house that looked lived in, even when it wasn't. The locals said the house wasn't empty. It was waiting. When Thomas Albridge bought it in the fall of 1974, he knew little of the rumors. He was a practical man, a young history professor at the university in Ashburn, newly married and eager to escape the bustle of the town. The property was cheap, too cheap for what it offered, a sprawling estate on 3 acres, dense with autumn trees. His wife, Claire, found it romantic. He found it an investment. They moved in on a crisp October morning. The air smelled of leaves and old wood, and the house, despite its creaking floors and faded wallpaper, had a certain melancholy charm. That first night, they discovered the sound came just after midnight, a soft dragging, like someone pulling a sack across the hallway floor above their bedroom. Thomas sat up, frowning, listening. Claire stirred beside him. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "Probably a raccoon in the attic," he said, though he wasn't sure. The sound had a rhythm, a purpose. He went upstairs with a flashlight. The beam sliced through the dark hallway, revealing nothing but peeling wallpaper and dust. The sound had stopped, but when he turned to go back down, he saw, just for an instant, a pale outline at the end of the corridor. It wasn't a person, not exactly, more like the impression of one, a shimmer, as if the air itself had taken human shape. Then it vanished. The days that followed brought more noises, footsteps, faint weeping, the crack of a door that hadn't been opened. Claire tried to ignore it at first. She busied herself with unpacking, rearranging furniture, and planting flowers in the front garden. But soon she began to feel it too, a heaviness in the air, a strange sensation of being watched. One afternoon, she found something odd in the attic, a locked chest tucked behind the beams. It was carved with strange symbols, faintly scorched. She showed it to Thomas, who decided to open it, reasoning that an old box was no cause for superstition. Inside were letters, bound with brittle ribbon, and a small silver hand mirror. The glass was so tarnished that it barely reflected. The letters were dated between 1890 and 1901 and signed by someone named Eliza Harrow. The first line of the first letter, read, "To whomever finds this, know that the house remembers." Thomas began researching the Harrow family. He found old records at the county library. The house had belonged to a doctor, Nathaniel Harrow, a surgeon who had served during the Spanish flu epidemic. His wife, Eliza, had died in 1901, officially, from complications of grief, after losing their daughter, Margaret, to illness. But several neighbors at the time had reported disturbances, screaming in the night, strange lights, and the eventual disappearance of Dr. Harrow himself. No one ever found his body. Thomas was fascinated. He began staying up late, reading the letters in sequence. They grew more erratic over time. Eliza wrote of her husband's experiments, of a growing presence in the house, and finally, of her fear that Nathaniel had found a way to unfasten the soul from its body. In early November, Claire began sleepwalking. She would rise silently at 2 or 3 in the morning and wander up to the attic. Thomas followed her one night, careful not to wake her. When she reached the locked chest, which he had since moved to the corner, she stopped and whispered something he couldn't make out. Then she lifted her hand as if to touch the air and said softly, "Margaret, come home." When he shook her awake, she looked terrified. "I dreamed of a little girl," she said. She was crying. She said she couldn't find her mother. After that, Claire refused to sleep upstairs. The house had grown colder, the mirrors fogged without reason, and the clocks began to lose time. One night Thomas woke to the sound of breathing beside the bed, not his wife's, but something close to the floor, ragged and wet. He turned on the lamp. Nothing, but the carpet beneath the bed was damp. By December, the marriage was fraying. Claire insisted they leave. Thomas refused. He had become obsessed with finding the truth of what had happened to Dr. Harrow. He'd begun keeping notes, recording sounds, even setting up a camera in the attic. One night he stayed up reviewing the film. At first, it showed nothing but shadows and dust motes. Then, at precisely 3:07 a.m. the attic door opened by itself. A woman stepped through. Her face was indistinct, her form wavering, but she moved with unmistakable grace. She walked toward the camera and spoke one word, "Stay." Then the film went black. Thomas didn't sleep that night. In the morning, he found his wife gone. Her suitcase was still in the bedroom, her car still in the driveway. The back door stood open. There were wet footprints on the kitchen floor, small ones, like those of a child. Weeks passed. The police found no trace of Claire. Thomas insisted she must have left on her own, but his colleagues noticed his lectures grew disjointed. He spoke of thin places and echoed time. He stopped coming to work altogether. When they finally entered the house in spring, they found him seated in a chair in the attic, facing the open chest. In his lap was the tarnished mirror. He was pale but alive, though when they tried to speak to him, he whispered only one thing. Over and over, she came back. Years later, when the house was sold again, the new owners reported strange occurrences, laughter in the attic, mirrors that showed unfamiliar faces, and at night, a woman's voice calling softly, "Margaret, come home." And sometimes, when the moonlight hits the upper windows just right, you can see them, a woman and a small child, standing hand in hand, waiting for someone to remember. 8.